Very much. Never fear, Nadia will be back with more news updates as we go through this evening. It's time now for not the France 24 debate, it's the Friday version, the world this week. Welcome to the studio. We're going to discuss 4 major news stories of the week. And let me bring you straight to our guests, because without them, it doesn't happen, does it? So our first guest is Anne Penketh, journalist from The Independent. Anne, thank you for being with us here in the studio. We appreciate your presence. On the other side of the platter from Anne, not opposed, just on the other side, it's a seating plan. Ammar Abd Rabbo, freelance journalist and photographer. Franco-Syrian.
Franco-Syrian.
Okay, so obviously a different perspective coming from your side, Ammar. Thank you for being with us. We also have, I'm pleased to say, Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, who is the columnist for Le Plus, which is an interactive website of the Nouvel Observateur, which is a well-known French magazine, of course.
Yes, sure.
So obviously, you know, a man of many opinions, and we're going to hear lots over the next hour, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for joining us. And last but definitely not least, Emma Kate Symons, who is Australian, which means she has an opinion on everything, I imagine, and correspondent for the Australian Financial Review.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Good to see you again. Okay, remember, you too can join in this debate, of course, via Twitter. You can tweet me on my very own Twitter webpage. There I am, picture of me there at a rugby final in Dublin. Tweet me, it'll get on air almost simultaneously. We have to sort of just basically process things a little bit. Let's start then with Africa's longest standing leader, 33 years in the job already. 89-year-old Robert Mugabe looks set to stay on as leader of Zimbabwe. The African Union said the vote there was free and peaceful, though it's been called a farce by Mugabe's challenger, Morgan Tsvangirai.
In Africa, we don't chase people.
Our conclusion has been that this has been a huge farce. The credibility of this election has been marred by administrative and legal violations which affect the legitimacy of its outcome. The election does not meet SADC guidelines. It is a sham election that does not reflect the will of the people.
We will stand by what we have said, that yes, the election is free, fairness, fairly credible, unless there's any other thing to prove beyond the incidences that we have already mentioned.
The AU observer there, weighing his words, choosing his words. Morgan Tsvangirai, of course, going straight to the jugular. He called it a farce completely. And can I bring you in? Would you be putting money on a Mugabe victory?
What do you mean, would I have before the election? Probably, actually. I mean, he does this as a way of life. It's very sad. But now you've got this Mexican or Zimbabwean standoff again, haven't you? Yeah. I think it all comes down to the voter rolls, though, as it did the last time. Yet we've seen this bad movie before, unfortunately. But you do have to ask, what is Tsvangirai doing? He has been the Prime Minister now for quite some time, and the electoral rolls were not revealed until the very eve of the poll. So he must have expected dirty tricks by Mugabe. What were the MDC doing to stop this happening again, you know?
So the MDC, Tsvangirai's party, of course, it was 2008 when they effectively won, if we're led to believe that, but the result was then adjusted. Mugabe back in power. Emma Kate, in terms of what's happening in Zimbabwe, it really is tragic. Once upon a time, the breadbasket of Africa, they say, and then run to ruin by Mugabe's policies over the past 10 years or so.
Sure. I mean, I was looking at some economic statistics, and Mugabe likes to refer to race and kind of whip up anti-white sentiment. But of course, most ordinary Zimbabweans know that the economy shrank 45% between 1999 and 2008. I mean, they're out of the worst of this crisis. However, what's really changed? Very little. And you have to ask whether Tsvangirai is simply just waiting around for 89-year-old Mugabe to just either pass into another realm or literally depart the political scene because he's too old. But he doesn't sound like he wants to do that. How much longer will he go on for? How many has it been? 33 years, 7 elections?
33 years, yeah. 33 years.
It's an epic effort.
is actually,
and is the West, are the British becoming a bit tired of this repeat scene with every election? I mean, they're not kicking up.
I think it won't be up to us anymore. I think more it'll be, has he got support from the neighbouring countries? And I really can't see the South Africans rallying behind Tsvangirai this time, actually. Zuma, I don't think so.
It's one of these things, Philippe, just to bring you in, Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, if you're a millionaire in Zimbabwe, you're not worth a lot of money, are you? I mean, the money's worth nothing, is it? It's what, $1 million Zimbabwe dollars is worth about 10 euros or something. That's not completely true.
There are great inequalities, but still Mugabe is as a kind of popularity in the country, because it is what we see from the West is a kind of a political monster. He has very, very bad image because of this land reform he made. That we remember about that images. We see that images of white farmers surrounded by an angry black mob. And obviously, in the West, it was very bad received, and there were violences at that time. He is also famous for his gay bashing, which is huge. It's impossible to be gay in Zimbabwe. But still, he has made a land reform that has allowed a lot of small black farmers to work on tobacco plantations, for instance. So the situation is maybe more complex than what we see from the West. And that may explain also that he has kind of support from the population, even if the elections are not free, really democratic elections, of course.
But still, Philippe, I mean, this is the youngest population in the world, I mean, Africa. And really, they do deserve better leaders, younger leaders.
Yes. We all deserve better leaders, obviously, especially them. But sometimes, even in France, you've got people that are elected despite their bad records. I mean, even if Cahuzac would come back, I'm sure he would be re-elected. And Cahuzac is the worst politician you can even imagine. From our standards, not Zimbabwean standards, but here in France, that's the worst you can do. And he will be re-elected if he goes to election. We can bet on it. I mean, I think he will be re-elected locally.
There is already argument about the results in Zimbabwe, of course. One media organisation saying that Mugabe's already got 2/3 of the vote, and then a report saying, well, that might be a slight error. But this is one of the big problems, isn't it, that you never can quite trust the words that are coming out, and can you? It's one of those things.
Well, and look who controls the Electoral Commission. You know, it's ZANU-PF. So in a situation like that, and to come back to what you were saying, Ammar, I mean, the people did actually rise up the last time in 2008, and look what they got then for their pains. I mean, it was absolutely horrendous, the political violence in Zimbabwe then. So you wonder now if they are Zimbabweans prepared to go through the whole thing again. And I do wonder whether Tsvangirai really has still got the same credibility that he had 5 years ago.
Of course, 2008, he stood down, didn't he, to stop further deaths. Since then, of course, he's been part of the establishment, and being, sort of the outlaw, if you like, gives you the right to talk, the right to say what you want, the right to sort of make suggestions. But when you're in power, of course, it's a different matter, and he's judged in a different way.
Of course, yeah, I mean, the problem of the elections and the disputed election, it's always seemed like, this movie where you always live the same day, day after day. And we've seen it in Ivory Coast, we've seen it a little bit in Senegal, now in Zimbabwe. I still believe these people deserve better. And unfortunately, I don't think the West can help them anymore. I mean, that's the other lesson from this, that we can bash and we can say this guy's a dictator, he's not good for you, he's blah, blah, blah. But what does it change on the daily life for them? Nothing.
Indeed, independent since 1980, as you say, so maybe the West's point of view has less and less influence. There's a tweet just come in from Ticket Source, he's called himself. The amount of 100-plus-year-olds on the electoral roll seems shady to me. Hints that, things have been manipulated a little bit, Philippe. Would you say that is...
There is a joke about this election that says that he's got only 2/3 of the population voting for him. That's strange. He should have 3/3, obviously. But 2/3 is a reasonable amount. Maybe he wants it to be credible.
It is funny, and it's tragic at the same time, isn't it?
Well, yeah. How is it? 1 million voters out of a roll of 6.4 million are just prevented from voting. I mean, this is the ultimate in gerrymandering, and as you suggest, Tsvangirai's credibility is dropping because he hasn't managed to improve that situation in 5 years. Will it be the same in another 5 years? One hopes not.
Okay. We await the result then from Zimbabwe, and obviously all anticipating a victory for Robert Mugabe, but also hoping that what happens next, as you were saying, Anne, doesn't descend into violence. Let's move on to another topic. I've got 4 people here dying to talk about this one, I know. Edward Snowden is out of Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport. I've been there, and frankly, I didn't envy him his stay in that place. Snowden's been granted temporary asylum by Russia. Snowden, of course, wanted by Washington after leaking top-secret information on the PRISM surveillance program. Let's listen now to White House spokesman Jay Carney.
We are extremely disappointed that the Russian government would take this step despite our very clear and lawful requests in public and in private to have Mr. Snowden expelled to the United States to face the charges against him. Mr. Snowden is not a whistleblower. He is accused of leaking classified information.
Very disappointed then. Americans, though, it seems, couldn't care less. A poll showed results that certainly showed a complete lack of interest, really, in terms of whether this man's captured or not. There we go. It's not decisive, is it, if you look at those figures? So it makes you kind of think about people like Julian Assange, Snowden, sort of freedom of expression is their thing, but they run to countries where freedom of expression is suppressed. I mean, Russia, Ecuador.
They have replaced journalists as the source for real free information. These guys, the whistleblowers, that's the truth. Journalism has become too close to power in the global image that the public has. Every poll shows that. So these whistleblowers have replaced the journalist in this Zorro-like of figure that will liberate you from your absence of knowledge of what's happening above. And that's really fascinating that these figures can be really popular in the networks on Twitter, and that they gain real political political momentum because of that. And what is fascinating is that every one of these figures is always that's the same thing happening over and over again. They go to a foreign country, they try to seek asylum, and the US tries to take them back, and that's really always the same scenario repeating. And there should be maybe a global thinking about all that, and maybe some kind of a political reflection about what can we do for these people to protect them from the governments that want to take them back after they have been whistleblowing, which is their role.
Slight separation in Assange's case.
Maybe we could
Snowden's
protect
case,
them under
course.
an international statute. Yeah?
Slight separation, of course, in the case of Snowden and Assange. Assange has these rape and attempted rape and sexual assault charges against him.
That's forgery. So.
And there's a big difference between journalists and what they're doing as well, as I would say, because as journalists, you're mediating the information. You're kind of there between
from
the
the
source.
point of view of the public, it's different. They don't see that kind of differences. They see a free information flowing from these people, from information that they didn't have before.
But it's just dumped there. You know?
Sure. Yeah, I know, but still, that's information that they didn't have. So they think that's valuable, and they want this guy to go on talking.
But how absurd that Vladimir Putin is there standing up for freedom of information and whistleblowers.
He doesn't stand for freedom of information, he stands up for annoying the US.
Of course, we know that. But this absurd situation where the former KGB operative is, as I was reading, Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, lambasted Obama and said, of course, the former KGB agent has bested the former community organizer. And he said that what Obama should have done was done a deal, like in the Cold War. We'll take a few of your agents or your top people or even
and
your girlfriends.
On the bridge,
he suggested
Snowden
Putin,
against
and
the
you give us
Russian
Snowden.
nations.
And so you can see the hawks in the US, like Senator John McCain, are really coming down heavily on the Obama administration because they see themselves as losing face enormously to Putin, who's having such a wonderful time inviting Snowden to stay for a year in Russia. I mean, he couldn't imagine something better. We don't talk anymore about these women in prison, Pussy Riot, journalists being killed, this incredibly authoritarian regime. I mean, it's just a gift to him. And Obama does look like he's on the back foot, right?
Do we get the impression that Putin couldn't care less about Snowden?
Probably he doesn't care much, but what really shocked me is more the reaction of Western European countries. I mean, we've spent all year long talking about freedom of speech, freedom of press. We have a kind of sanctity, for this. And a whistleblower for me is really someone to be helped, to be secured, etc. And their reaction with the whole commedia of the airplane of Ecuador president, or something like,
that was shameful.
Nobody wants to have him. That was really shameful. That's the word. Thank you, Philippe. I mean, I felt really bad that day. I understand Putin's. It's a tool for him. It's a great opportunity, but we are also giving him this opportunity. It's our fault,
I remember covering a story about a whistleblower who exposed shortcomings in hospitals in the northwest of England. And this gentleman lost his job, was then derelict and had no one fighting his corner at all. So whistleblowers, yes, should be protected. I'm a little concerned that the likes of Assange and maybe Snowden less so are really self-seeking. They're looking to make a buck out of it. They're looking to create something for themselves. And maybe they're less interested in the freedom, as you're saying, and more interested in cash. Am I just being too cynical?
But do we really care what their intentions were? Because ultimately what we've seen is an incredible expose of a system we knew existed, but the extent to which the surveillance has been and continues to be conducted has really been exposed thanks to people like Snowden and before him Assange. So, and now what do we do with that information? Should these people be persecuted? I mean, I find it incredible that the US is begging Putin to hand back Snowden and saying, we won't torture him. We won't, impose the death penalty. It's such an absurd reversal of situations when one thinks of the Cold War. There's no longer the upper hand, the moral high ground.
And how can you present not torturing somebody as a good thing? I mean, it's
exactly.
That's the Middle Ages.
And thanks to Snowden, Congress has now got hold of it, which is actually probably even more important than the public opinion polls that you were talking about. And they have proved that national intelligence leaders in America have lied to Congress, and they don't like that.
Sure.
Were any of us surprised though by what was revealed? Because don't we all accept that we're spied on by Big Brother, Big Obama, Big Putin, Big whoever?
I think it was the scope, though, wasn't it? The scope.
What shocked you in particular?
Evidence.
Is the one aspect that shocked you in particular?
It was that. It was all the emails, all the telephone calls, this and that.
Basically, you have just to go to a web interface, web thing, and you type the words you're looking for, the name of each one of us here, and you have their emails, the emails they sent, the phone calls they passed. That's as easy as that. And all the US say is that it's restricted only to the individuals that are expressly allowed to use that system. So not everybody can check on you, but still, the administration can do the job. And that's worrying. Everything is online now, so.
Does anybody believe them being the authorities, when they say, "Well, we don't check on everybody. It's just people we suspect"?
No
I mean,
way.
I like the way you look at each other. Very nice.
Mark, to be honest, as a journalist and a little bit paranoiac, I'm always assume that when you open your laptop, someone somewhere is looking at what I do. So. I don't know. I mean, they probably have a lot of fun with some of the images and movies I look at. But on the other hand,
Please tell us more.
Yes, that's not enough.
No, but what's really amazing is that institutions like the European Parliament or the European Commission, that's more shocking than my little person,
Okay.
And this went. I mean, this went off the news just 3 or 4 days later. I mean, that wasn't big news.
It's time for us to take a break. We're going to talk more about Ammar's film tastes whilst you take in some adverts, and we'll be back for some news very shortly. Stay with us. The second part of the World This Week coming up, and this man featuring, of course, Pope Francis. Stay with us.